Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton.
And this is Nate Drolet.
And we are here to discuss training outside on sport climbs to be a better sport climber. And this is how it was before gyms, but I think a lot of people came into climbing post-climbing gym. You know, I started in a gym, so I get it. And they just don't realize that training can indeed be done really effectively outside.
Yeah, like you said, this is the way it was done for a long time. There's actually still a lot of people, this is what they do. They boulder in the gym, they sport climb outside. And it's a very effective method for improving at sport climbing. Before we fully get started, I think there's something that we need to get out of the way and we should talk about. Probably need to know where I'm going with this, but it's our favorite phrase, junk miles. So something that I'll hear every now and then, because I'll talk with people and they'll say, yeah, you know, I get like 3, maybe 5 pitches outside. And I'm like, well, why don't you get more? Because you say you want more endurance. They're like, well, I don't want to do junk miles. Isn't more junk miles? So let's go into this. Like,
I feel triggered, Nate.
Oh, very. Like, there are so many reasons why if you're climbing outside, it's probably not junk miles. So junk miles came from 80s and 90s era running. And it was a lot of it just, it's a terrible phrase. Like if you go looking into it, it means seemingly nothing.
Yeah.
There's a more specific phrase used called the gray zone, which is just, you know, there are these specific zones you can train for within long endurance sports, and anything outside of those are the gray zones. And there's actually been a bit of pushback on that lately, saying, you know, just because we can measure here is your anaerobic threshold,
right.
Here is this threshold. Just because we're measuring it doesn't mean we need to be chasing those specifically, and maybe we're doing it to our own detriment.
Yep.
And it's wild hearing this for running and cycling, because they're like, look, the second you hop on a bike and the second you start running, you're using all of your energy systems. And so we can't just train for one, because if there's any sports that in my mind, I'm like, yeah, you could probably just get away with really diving into the details and training for these specific zones. It should be these, because climbing is absolutely not. Climbing is so varied that the idea of trying to perfectly organize and nail down these zones, it's not going to happen. Like we just don't have the technology right now. You could maybe do it if you're not on the wall climbing, which I think is one of the worst ideas you can possibly have for endurance training, but we can get into that. So yeah, this idea of gray zones, and even the guy who coined the term, Jack Daniel, I think was his name, wrote a book on running training. Even one of his massive gray zones, he's now gone back. He's like, oh, I was wrong there. Like, that's not a gray zone. Turns out that's actually super useful. So, junk mileage, gray zones, they're kind of like, junk miles especially is kind of a sloppy phrase thrown around. Basically, now it's used in running when you just say, well, if you don't have an exact plan, when you leave the door, it's junk miles.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say it, they're like, it's not like junk miles are actually like that bad. They're just not a part of your perfect periodized plan. Okay, so step 1, I think, is saying that like maybe it's a phrase that's used a little bit too much, and to try and correlate it to rock climbing feels like a huge stretch to me and to a lot of other coaches as well. Number 2 is, let's say even if it was junk miles, if you don't climb outside often enough, the slight dip in the effectiveness of your endurance training is worth it 1,000 times over for the benefits you get of more volume climbing on rock.
100%.
If you average 2 days a week outside sport climbing per year or more, yeah, we can talk a little bit more about junk miles. If you're hitting 100 days outside on a rope a year, you might be like, Nate, that's a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, if you were hitting on average only 50 days a year, once a week or less, junk miles don't exist to you. You don't have enough volume on rock to call almost anything junk miles. And there's like some really extreme examples. Like if you went and set up a top rope and you're like, I'm going to top rope this 5-6 till my hands bleed. Sure, maybe that's a problem, but also that's just a bad idea. So I would say, number 2 is the amount of outdoor volume that you would be getting from extra mileage is going to be worth it for almost anyone other than full-time outdoor rock climbers. And finally, number 3, and this is kind of I find this one interesting. There's this weird logical dilemma in rock climbing when it comes to endurance training, especially for outdoor climbing. So a lot of people will say, yeah, you shouldn't be sport climbing in the gym. It's like, maybe if you don't know how to lead climb, do that so you know how to clip bolts. But otherwise, get on the spray wall and do circuits. Way more time efficient, much more effective, which, you don't have to have a belayer. You don't need friends. It's great. I don't know how you're going to climb things outside without a belayer. But yes, a lot of people will say, way, way more effective to do endurance work on boulders than on ropes. I think this is an oversight to all the mental training that goes on with practicing lead climbing for 90% of people. But let's just say, okay, yeah, absolutely. Boulders are much more effective than lead in a gym for getting endurance training. If we look at outdoor climbing, it is so much slower and clumsy and clunky than lead climbing in the gym. The idea that anyone is capable, you have to be incredible with your systems and effectiveness and like a partner relationship to ever scratch the surface of junk miles outdoors. It's just really hard to do. Like you have to be really on top of it to get just to an effective level of volume. So the idea of junk miles, and sometimes I often hear the same coaches say the two things. They're like, well, too much climbing outside is junk miles, don't do that. But also they're like, you can't get enough volume lead climbing in the gym without being there for 12 hours a day. It's like, okay, well, which one is it?
Yeah.
Like these are very conflicting. So this is for me just saying overall, for outdoor sport climbing, I don't think junk miles is really a thing you need to be concerned with. Outdoor bouldering, very different. Like, because there's no cost to get on a boulder. You just walk up, you throw your pads down, you pull on. You can kind of give infinite tries. Sport climbing is very self-limiting, especially outdoors. You have to hang draws. You got to get to the top so you can get those draws back down. There is also the social pressure of you've got a belayer that if you're going to go just flail on this thing, you're putting them through it too. Like, there are so many safeguards against doing too much volume outside. It's kind of hard. And unless you are really good at doing a ton of volume outside, it's not a problem. So I know this was a big, long 8-minute rant about junk miles, but there it is. And I feel like this was important because I keep running into people who are like, I just don't want junk miles. And it's like, you don't need to be afraid of getting junk miles. In fact, I'm seeing what you're doing out here. You don't need to be afraid of getting a good workout either, because you're not even close to that. Like, good news, we got a ways to go.
Yeah, totally. I abhor the phrase with all of my being. I think it's a phrase that was made up by people who don't climb outside very often. That's
what it feels like.
Or, it was a phrase that was applied by people that don't climb outside very often.
Yeah, and I tried to have a good faith stance on this. So I went and I read I read a bunch of climbing and running and cycling articles, which were all very conflicting. But also then going to the climbing ones were, I don't feel I don't feel like any arguments were attempted to be made around this. It felt
Yeah.
like a lot of it was like, oh, this is just like SEO keyword fodder to draw you to a website.
Yeah. I like it when you get shake your head frustrated instead of me. I like that a lot. But, I think most of us started climbing because we want to be able to climb more and harder things. None of us started climbing because we want to climb one really hard thing and then we're done.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to go outside and do several hard things in a day.
Yeah.
I need a lot of years of air quote junk mileage to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this was something that I was reading from a running coach who was like, look, if you're new to running, a lot of your like base work just to get your body physically capable of doing more volume, it's going to be air quotes junk work, like junk volume, junk mileage, because you can't handle doing hard training, for 50 miles a week if you've only been running 20. We have to just slowly build you up and get your whole body, your joints, connective tissues, everything just used to more stress to get you there. Yeah, last thing, and then we'll move on to real practicals here. What this feels like, because you said when you hear people talk about junk miles, it feels like people who've never sport climbed outside. To me, it reminds me of whenever I hear a nutritionist, and I don't hear this as often, but nutritionists who will say, hey, if you're trying to watch your weight, watch out for apples and bananas and grapes because they've got too much sugar. Brother.
Yeah.
That is not the problem. That is not in the top 100 list of problems. Maybe there are 5 people out there who are eating apples by the bushels. Talk to them. This is not something you should give broadly. It is harmful advice.
Yeah.
And that is how I feel about a lot of this kind of junk volume rhetoric is just, I'm sure there are definitely people out there doing absolutely silly things. Yeah, let's talk to them directly. We don't need to paint with broad brushes and suddenly fearmonger people of just, oh no, you're doing very ineffective training and everything you're doing is wrong. This is junk that you're doing.
Yeah. I'm glad you're so frustrated by this. This makes me really happy.
Very. I just want to help people, and I hate seeing shitty advice going to well-meaning people.
Yeah, I've talked about this in both of my books, I think, and a number of times on the podcast and on social media, but I suspect what's happening is that people get really into training. They consider themselves an expert on training, and they may very well be.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't spent a ton of time climbing outside and trying projects outside, and they go out on their, 8 days a year that they go out rock climbing, and they find it really hard to transfer all these things they've done to the outdoors. And they start to feel like they're giving low quality attempts because they don't know how to give high quality attempts in the outdoors yet. They haven't had enough junk mileage to really get comfortable there. And they start to try to apply their training principles to this performance situation. And they end up thinking, I should stop because I'm not giving high quality attempts anymore. Or I'm fatigued because I've now done more than the 6 hangs I normally do in a session or something like that. And that's just not how it works. You train for the performance. And then when you go out and perform, you put it all out there. If you go home exhausted out of your mind, that's fine.
Yeah. Eat some food, go to sleep. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's get back on track.
Wow. This really was a role reversal here.
I love it.
Okay. So if we're talking about training outside on ropes, I think this is great. I used to do this all the time. I mean, I lived in Kentucky for a while. Even living in Tennessee, I've never lived somewhere with a good rope gym until just now. And even now, I don't know, I'm constantly what routes do I want to train on outside? Because that feels good to me and it feels the most applicable.
Same.
It is literally a 1-to-1 do the thing I'm going to perform on. So I think step one for a lot of people is getting good systems down. So communicating with your partner of, hey, how many pitches are we trying to do today? Like, because if you go in without a plan, nothing good's going to come from that.
Yeah, I think you have to decide, is this a training day or a performance day? It can be both in some scenarios. You can have performance attempts and then training goes. But if you don't have the intention from the outset, I think it's going to be tough to do either well. You're not going to get a great performance and you're not going to get good training out of it.
Agreed. So yeah, right out off the bat, you need a plan. And I've got plenty of clients back who climb in the red. Often what we'll do is, if they're going out to the red for Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, we're going to lean into performance. You're going to warm up effectively, go out, give your project a couple burns. We're going to end the day still feeling okay. Maybe you're going to do a cool down burn or two, but nothing crazy. Sunday, we're trying either the project again or a secondary project. And then you're running laps. You're going to do some fitness work because you've got, 5 days between now and when you come back. And you should be trying to keep either build more endurance or keep your endurance really topped off. And this is something that, is very common for higher level climbers, but doesn't seem to trickle down as much down lower.
Yeah. And I'll say this, and I'm only speaking for me. I suspect I'm speaking for you as well. When we say endurance or power endurance, we're not talking specifically about the energy system and drawing lines around it. For me, when I say you need to work on your endurance, I'm also talking about the mental aspects of endurance, the grit that it takes to keep going when your skin hurts and when you're pumped out of your mind and you can't think straight and you can't place your feet right anymore. I'm talking about all of these skills that build to create an endurance performance or a power endurance performance. And that's way more than just the energy system that you can maybe work on a hangboard.
Yeah. I think this is an important thing to discuss. Once again, if someone said, hey, I want to train endurance off the wall, they'd have to have some really specific reasons for that. Are they currently deployed? Oh, what's that? You're out deployed across the other side of the world. There's nowhere you can climb. You've got a hangboard with a pulley. My man, you're doing repeaters till your eyes bleed. I mean, ironically, I was joking with someone about this the other day about when I first started climbing. I didn't know anyone who hangboarded regularly other than I would meet people in the military who'd been deployed. And so they actually would hangboard. And then I paused and I was like, wait, isn't that how the Anderson brothers also both got into it? Hilarious. Yeah. And I was like, I feel like this is just the origin story of American hangboarding, really.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. And thank the troops, y'all, for the hangboarding. But yeah, I think there's very few cases where I think people should be doing off the wall endurance. If you are already climbing a ton and you happen to have a great amount of capacity, you could maybe sneak in a little bit here and there. Like if you climb outside on ropes 3 days a week and that isn't enough, or if you climb somewhere where it's just truly not possible, like you go to a cliff that has a 511 in your 13C project, if you want to do some extra like off the wall stuff to keep your skin good, I could see it, but man, I want to say truly like 95+% of people, like you will benefit so much more from actually moving on the wall, because endurance, the actual physical capabilities of endurance, that's not the hardest thing about hard sport climbing.
Not even close.
That's
not at all why people fall off ever, unless they're really high level climbers.
Yes. the amount of other things that go into it, like, yes, obviously it's beneficial, it's good. That's why we're also talking about training on routes, but there's so much that goes into sport climbing well
Yeah.
that if you don't have those other factors taken care of, I mean, man, you can show up in great shape. I've done this, man. My first day in climbing in Smith Rock, I did not trust the feet.
Totally.
The bolts were not as close as I would have liked. I had a new belayer. I literally walked up to the crowd. I was like, "How's it going? I'm Nate. Would you like to climb with me for the next month?" It somehow worked. I got so pumped on 511 my first 3 days. And then I was like, oh, okay, I can trust feet. I'm not as scared over a bolt. I'm getting back into all those other things and also I've been bouldering all summer. Finally, when I was remembering all my years of sport climbing and finally able to lean on those, it's like, okay, cool. I can go back to on-sighting 512 and climbing 513 quickly and, doing all of this. But I did not get any fitter in that period of time.
And I think that's the first strategy we should point out here. If you're a person who doesn't get outside enough to be really comfortable and be honest with yourself, are you really comfortable climbing? Can you climb above a bolt and not be worried about it? Do you trust the footholds? Can you just pause and stand there in a position that otherwise would feel insecure? If you're not that person yet who can do those things, then the strategy is climb on some lower level things until you start to get comfortable. Keep pushing a little bit of discomfort. But if you get on a thing at your top level in the gym, you're going to be so out of your comfort zone that you're not going to be able to learn anything. You're not going to get comfortable. You're going to be better off dropping the level down and spending a few days building up to the comfort level required to get on something really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to go. And kind of, I talked about earlier, the running coach was discussing junk miles and how for runners who don't have a ton of miles under their legs, who want to build up to higher volumes because you need higher volumes for better training. That is just a part of it. That is what we understand now. In order to get there, it's okay to just kind of throw in whatever. We don't need it to be super hard. And this is something that I see people get wrong all the time, is they'll say, man, I can only go up my project maybe 3 times. And that's even a task. To go up a 3rd time, how do I do more pitches? And it's like, hey, first off, that's understandable. And I think that is correct. For a lot of people, that's a correct assumption to come to, of just hey, I warm up well, I try my project, I feel smoked. I can't even pull off the ground on it anymore. What do I do? Because that doesn't feel sustainable. I agree. Go get back on the warm up.
Yeah. Man,
when I'm getting back into sport climbing shape, I bully myself into more pitches by leaving my draws up on the warm up. I'll just hike extra draws in. Looks like that's going to be my cooldown, or I'm leaving my draws.
Yeah.
So sometimes draws get left, but
I mean, when I was climbing at the red often, and I was in the 13 plus range, I can't tell you how many days I ended by headlamp on a mid 512.
Yeah. Yes.
After several tries on the project, it's getting dark, but I have more left. The daylight's dying, but I have more to give. And I had more to give because that's what we did starting at 511. You just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep building. And then all of a sudden you can give 4 or 5 good attempts on a hard project in a day.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite examples of this that I like to bring up, because earlier on I talked about how higher level climbers will do certain things that clearly work well, where other climbers below them do not. When I say higher level, I'm talking about pros at this point. We've all heard about crazy days that Adam Ondra will have, where he'll do 15B and 15A, 214Ds, stuff like that. Sasha Julian had a day at her performance peak where she did a new 14C, a new 14B, on-sighted a 13D, did another 13D second try, on-sighted a 13C, and flash to 13B. And I remember reading it and I was like, oh, by the way, this was in a day. This was a session. Like, I was just like, who ties in that many times?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen Jonathan Seagrass at the cliff just ticking off 513s in a day.
Yeah.
Like Adam Audra will go up and try an on-site 14A, 8B plus as part of his warm-up. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. He gets super pumped, but then he's like, okay, cool. Well, that was my warm-up. I'm going to go hop on this 515 now. Even though it wasn't perfect, I think it's easy to get really guarded around. Only want to give perfect efforts. I only warm up sufficiently enough that I can try my project. And once I've tried my project enough, well, I can't go try other things afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, because
don't go do that 14D because that's junk miles.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam. And this is actually, so this leads me into my next point. You know, we talked about how a good starting place is, dude, just do something easy. Like, just add in easy volume. We're trying to get your body just used to doing more pitches and, frankly, getting in the habit of it. Understanding how to be effective with your time, that communication with your belayer, all super useful. Having done the 24 hours of horseshoe hell, man, so much of that is truly, and you've done it as well.
It's logistics.
It's logistics. I mean, yeah, me and my partner, when we went out to go train for that, we were doing 30 to 50 pitch days for like 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like, which is crazy thinking about it now, because I'm like, Jesus, I would die doing 50 pitch days. But
yeah, I can't do 50 pitch months.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a 50 pitch day for us was like, that was, you know, I want to say that was like 7 or 8 hours of climbing. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but we just nailed our logistics down. And that was half of what we were doing, was how do we make our transitions better? How do we just get everything sorted?
Yeah, and you can do that in a normal day as well. Like, that's
you
what
can also do
Sarah
50
and
pitches.
Taylor and I did. No, you should not do 50 pitches. But that's what we did all the time, is like the logistics. Like, if you're the person who's not belaying in this 3 group, go get the next route ready for the next person, whoever that is, whether it's the person belaying or you. Go get prepared, and that way the team keeps moving. Everybody keeps moving. Everybody gets more done, and that allows you to get more done.
Yes, it's funny, climbing in a group of 3. Everyone's got strong opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing how if you're with a group who's just like on top of things with good logistics, dude, it's a ton of fun, and you can get as much climbing as your body can handle in a group of 3. But if you're in a group with bad logistics, good luck getting 3 pitches in that day. It's going to be awful the entire time. Like, but yeah, some of my favorite days I've ever had, groups of 3. And
totally,
because you're like, oh man, I have like all this extra time that I get to rest, and I'm not belaying before I go climb on my next pitch. This is wonderful. But yeah, man, you just have to be dialed in.
Yep. So
step 1, logistics. Step 2, easy volume. Just pack it in. After that, a big thing I would say for a lot of people, I'm a big fan of like secondary projects. So you try your hard thing, let's go do something a little easier afterwards. I think this is something that people get wrong more than almost anything. So to bring in an example, when Paige Clausen wanted to go do Necessary Evil, iconic 14C, notoriously challenging, she had been moonboarding and like TRXing all summer in South Africa, where her and her husband go and work, and came back. She's like, I'm really out of shape, but I want to try Necessary Evil. So she was like, I'll try Necessary Evil, and then I'll do some fitness work afterwards. Do you know how hard her fitness secondary projects were? 13A. 6 letter grades below what her project was.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, it worked. Like, so she would try Necessary Evil, and when she knew she couldn't get more good goes, she would pick one of the 13As, work that, maybe send it, maybe not, maybe try to send it the next day. But this was her process through the whole projecting, and she got fit enough and sent.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was climbing with Dave Graham in Rifle once, and he was trying a new 14D, was complaining that he'd just been bouldering all summer, didn't have any fitness. So at the end of the day, he went over to Pumperama and yelled
13A.
his way up Pumperama, 13A. He did not look good on it, but he fought his way up it. And he did eventually send the 14D.
Yeah. I think this is something a lot of people get wrong. So there's this idea of you've got project level and then second tier. So if you're a 13A climber, second tier, 12D, 12C, maybe 12B, honestly, depending on the style. So things that are still challenging, they're going to take you a couple goes, maybe a couple sessions, depending on how solid you are at 13A. I think we should be looking maybe towards like third tier for this type of like quick volume. And there's so much to learn. If you're a 13A climber, dude, go do some techie like 11 pluses. Or if you're a technical climber, go do some pumpy 11 pluses or some bouldery 11 pluses.
Yeah.
Man, there is so much value in that. That's going to make you a better climber. You're going to keep getting fitter from it because it's more volume and you're not going to get really bogged down. Because the problem with, let's say you got a 13A project and you're like, okay, well then I'll try the 12C afterwards. And if you're too tired to try the 13A, you're not going to be that much more fresh for 12C. It's still too close in proximity for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what happens is a lot of people like to count goes on everything.
Yeah.
And so they get stuck in this, I have to preserve my attempts mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can just take yourself out of that, even if it's just for the one project, count goes on the hard thing. Don't count goes on this second or third tier project. This is just a thing you're going to get done. You're going to put in the work on it. You're going to get it done. Let go of that need to count goes for a little while, and it'll benefit you.
Absolutely. I love that you brought this up. I mean, because this is a classic conversation you have with people all the time, sport climbing. And, you'll see someone send something. You'd be like, oh man, cool. Nice job. That's a fun one. And be like, yeah, it took me like 12 goes. 11 of them, I was exhausted. Today's the first day I've tried it fresh.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, of course. Like, it's not as fun to send something in 11 goes that probably could have been 3. But if it's for the training, who cares? Like, it's still going to make you better. And sport climbing fatigued does make you climb better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is such a valuable tool. Mike Doyle, previous Canadian youth climbing coach, talked about how he thinks one of the biggest benefits for young climbers, especially young sport climbers, is that they can just handle they can get really wrecked and then bounce back.
Yeah. Like an hour later.
For real. Yeah. But because they can bounce back so fast, they can dig themselves into a fatigue hole a little bit more. And when you're really fatigued, you suddenly can't lock off every move and just jump and cut feet. If the goal is still to send the thing, man, you're going to try and get scrappy. You're going to figure out everything you can. This was one of my favorite things starting climbing because, your work capacity is just terrible when you first start. So every project went the exact same. My first 2 years of climbing, I would work something so much in that first session and I would get more and more tired. And as I got more tired, I'd be like, oh, I can turn my knee. And then I'd get more tired and be like, oh, okay, well, I can push with both legs. And then by the end, you're somehow almost sending, even though you're smoked. You take a rest day, you come back, and you just casually walk it because you have the fatigue state beta.
One of the seasons I was working on swing line, I was using, I think it's Shanghai on the dark side. Yeah, terrible name. That should have been another Star Wars reference. Come on, people.
Agreed.
Shanghai was my end of day route and Shanghai's 12 plus.
Yes.
And my goal for the whole season that I never achieved was to get myself in so deep of a hole on swing line that I couldn't send Shanghai at the end of the day.
Amazing.
I built up to being able to give swing line 6 or 7 attempts, and could still do Shanghai. I would fight for it. I would barely finish it, but I could always finish it. And I think it taught me a lot about how fast I'm climbing, how much fatigue I can still fight through at that level. Because, even though I'm projecting 13D, 12D is still hard.
Absolutely.
But knowing that I could do it with that little left in the tank gave me so much to run off of for years.
I completely agree. And this was going to be one of my later points, but this is a big thing for projects too. There are so many times where on every hard sport climb I've ever done, I've always had that one link that you do at the end of the day. You're smoked, it's a big overlap, and you do the red point crux, and you're like, I am more tired now, just full body smoked, than I will ever be from the ground. And you make it through. Every single time when I actually do get to that red point crux from the ground, I'm like, I'm pumped, but it doesn't matter. I've been so much worse and made it through. Like, you just know how to move so much better because you've been so fatigued, and you have the confidence, which sport climbing, that is everything. Like, confidence is enormous.
Yeah, I've got a good tactic for building confidence, especially if you're intermediate level. You have the ability to be climbing outside quite a bit. If you're using your outdoor day as a training day or the end of the day as training time, when you send a thing, make it a rule that you then have to immediately top rope it.
Yeah.
And this used to be a rule for us in the gym, and it was amazing to watch the confidence of people who would send a project they've been working on for weeks and then get to the chains, lower down, immediately start climbing again and finish it on top rope.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what the fuck? How did I just do that? And it just lets you know you can climb. That route could have been double the length. That route stacked on top of itself, and you might have been able to send.
Yeah. That when I first did Mercy of the Huff, 12B as in boy, one of my first 12Bs, it had taken me, I don't know, like 10 tries to do it. And I came back the next weekend, and for some reason, I wanted to see if I could do it without stopping to chalk or shake for the entire route. And I did, which was wild. But because I knew I would get pumped, I immediately switched over to how do you climb when you're fatigued? Like, how do you move? Not when you're going to be able to stop and shake at every bolt like you do on Mercy normally, but immediately I kicked into that super efficient method.
Yeah, and that's a constraint you can put in place that forces you into that. And I've seen it over and over, that people just can't climb efficient until you force them into that position. And then all of a sudden, they're tucking themselves into all these little drop knees, and they're super efficient all of a sudden.
Yes, I do think if it feels hard to be super efficient, or you're like, I don't know how I could be more efficient, sometimes you just got to bludgeon yourself with this. Just, hey, you can be more efficient, and it needs to be something you have to do. You still want to send this, but you're really tired. You'll find a way. It's amazing. But if you're only trying things fresh, we can like kind of burl our way through a lot of things.
Yeah, totally.
So you just said something which leads me into my next point. You said, you can skip rest. You can force this into being what you need. So this is something that I think is really important with training outside. Make routes whatever you need them to be.
Yeah.
Skip rests. Do the sequel, skip holds. Do whatever you need to do. I'm a big fan of maybe I'll force myself. I'll still take a rest, but it'll be on bad holds. I climb past the jug. I grab 2 crims. Okay, I'm shaking out on this now. There are so many ways you can take outdoor climbs and make them work for you. And the same thing, we talk about this all the time with bouldering and warming up on boulders. You don't have to use the normal beta. We go out climbing together. We make up eliminates all the time.
Yeah.
That's a ton of fun. And you can make, I can make a V2 feel like V8, and it does the process I need for warming up.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're, end of the day training, there are times when I've a good example is Cat's Demise.
Mhm.
There's the middle section of Cat's Demise is this really incredible, like slopey, pinchy sequence. And at the end of the day, just for training, quite often we would go there and I would just climb up to that middle section, go to the top of it, clip the last bolt of that middle section, lower down to the first move of that middle section, and just keep running laps on just that middle section. Like,
Yeah.
this is the perfect power endurance section, where there are no rests, there are no positive holds. You just have to keep your shit together and squeeze. And it just felt great. And if you can find whatever it is, if it's a crimpy section, if it's the 10-foot technical crux of a 511 might be a perfect thing for you to do over and over.
Absolutely. If there are knee bars, skip them. Standing rests, skip them.
Totally.
It's really easy to make routes what you need them to be. You just have to get a little creative. But yeah, if you get creative, you can make a 511 into 512 very fast.
Mm-hmm. We used to, if you're a Red River climber, you might know the route Africa. And there is a little hole halfway up, like a little bitty ledge that you step onto, and the crux is coming off of that hole because you kind of lose the crack for your feet. The crack starts at chest level or stomach level, so you have to do this high step on these kind of tight hand jams. As part of training, we would go up there, wiggle our way into the hole, and roof crack climb out of it. Like, no feet on the ledge at all. We would do crack climbs often with no feet on face holds. And then we would do it no feet in the crack. And you just have to learn different skills that way. And it was a great way to prepare ourselves.
Yeah, I believe it. All right, so let's talk about how do you pick a good route for doing repeats on, or for training?
I think you just have to. For me, it should be something well, unless you're specifically training for on-sites or something like that. But if you're training to get a physical response, for me, it should be something well. And it should be something you can top rope or get down from easily, like if you're building anchors and all of this other rigmarole, not the thing. So accessibility should be easy. And then like we were just talking about, it should be something you can turn into whatever you need it to be. Like, you can skip the rests and it becomes harder, or if you have to bail out to the rest, you have that option. So that you can adjust its difficulty as you climb. I think if we're looking for a general route, that's something to look for.
Cool. I like those. Couple things I'll add. I think skin friendly is good. Preferably so something not sharp.
Yep.
Something moderately enjoyable. Doesn't have to be the most fun thing in the world. I think a 3-star climb is a nice sweet spot. And I say this also because, it would be fun to run laps on the most classic, iconic route at the crag. But if there's a lineup of 8 people,
you're the asshole.
Yeah. I was just going to say you got to cut off a lot of people, but I guess that too. Just tell them that you're here to warm up on it. Like, I think that's fine. I do it all the time. That does remind me. I used to snooker at the Red, the 13A. Used to be the end of my warm up, and also I would cool down by just doing a bunch of laps on it. And I had a terrible sequence for the crux. I would just eliminate all good holds, and I found a way that you could just turn it into a really long sustained crimp crux by going off the normal line. Anytime people would watch me on it, they'd be like, "Is that good beta?" I'm like, "No, it's not. Don't go out there." But it was perfect. It worked great. So I think pick something that is fun, skin friendly, and that hopefully isn't the most popular. Like it's okay if it kind of is, but also, you don't want to be waiting in a line because that's going to deter you, especially if you're fatigued
Yeah.
at the end of the day and you already kind of want to go home and eat some food. You want something you can just step up on.
Yeah.
So I also think having a couple different routes is really useful. One for a line. But the other reason, you talked about endurance isn't just a physical trait. We also want just to be able to climb well. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of having a handful of things that it's like, oh, well, I haven't done that 12D in like 3 years. I'm going to go hop on that today. I don't remember it that well. That's going to work really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that, I think, can be great. I do find it funny in Rifle how everyone's end of the day route is Pumperama. Like people
Yeah.
all just go and run laps on it, which violates a lot of things. Like very skin friendly, but you're waiting in a line all of the time and you're doing the same thing over and over. And then you're that guy who's like, oh, actually, it's probably 12D now that I've done it 100 times.
Right.
But
totally.
it's an overhanging crag with so many 12 plus and 13 minus.
Mm-hmm.
Just go down the line, like change it every day, do a different one. And that little bit of variation, yeah, you're going to have to climb being a little bit unsure and not knowing exactly what you're doing. It's not going to be so completely mindless that it's just a physical stimulus.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, those are some of the things I like to keep in mind. Another one. Don't be afraid to pack in a little more volume for your warm-ups.
And I think keep adjusting that as you get better and better. Keep adjusting that.
Elaborate on that.
Well, there was a time when, like the day I did swing line and that season actually, I was doing the force twice as a warm up before I would get on swing line. And it's because I'd realized that I had so much capacity that climbing it once really didn't get me ready to try hard. So I needed another lap up it before I was ready to really go. And that was after climbing multiple 512s at a different crag every day before we went there. And that's different now. I don't have the capacity I used to have. So my warm-ups are going to be different now. So I think you should keep adjusting your warm-up based on what you need for, to get to the place you need to be, as opposed to just, oh, I warm up on 2 routes and then I'm ready to go. Like I hear people say that all the time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Thanks for elaborating. I like the rule of thumb that whatever the grade you're going to climb on, you should be warming up to at least one number grade below it.
Yeah.
Like when I was trying 14A in the red, I'd be warming up on 13A.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be the end of my warm up. Sometimes I would, do it twice. But you need to warm up sufficiently. And I think this is the place that people cut off volume on all sides. They cut it off at the end because they're like, well, I'm tired. Let's go home. That's easy to do. But a lot of people cut volume in the front because they don't want to be too tired for their project. Yeah. But if you never get volume at the end, throw in an extra route. I think it's very worthwhile.
Yeah, and I'll also say it doesn't have to be, we've sort of already talked about this, but it doesn't have to be that grade if you can make it that grade. So you don't have to get, if your project is 12C, you don't have to get on a route that's graded 11C. It could be 10B, but you just climb a sequence the harder way so that it's closer to 11C-ish, and then you might be ready. So it doesn't mean you have to go find the route that fits that category.
Totally. Last thing I'll say here is for people who lean into sport climbing when they're in the sport climbing phase, just boulder once a week still.
Yeah.
It's going to check so many boxes and it's so much easier than being like, okay, well, how do I increase my power on route? Like, how do I increase power and finger strength and endurance and power endurance and all this? Go bouldering. Just boulder 1 day a week, try really hard. Man, that's going to take care of a lot for you.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're totally averse and just refuse to boulder, I would go get on some short, hard sport routes where you really have to work out the moves. You're really having to try hard and give high intensive effort, instead of just falling into that same trap of, oh, this is a harder grade, so it must mean I'm doing harder moves. But that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think ultimately, to wrap this up, go in with the intention of what you're going to do. Consider it a little bit. I see a lot of people just at the end of the day thinking, oh, I should probably do a little training, a couple training burns. And that can be effective, but you're going to get a better return if you go in with a plan and you have a plan for every single one of your sessions. But it can absolutely be done as long as you have that plan.
Yeah.
All right. You guys know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. Nate and I are both on the YouTubes and leaning into that platform. So if you've not checked us out over there, the links are right there in your show notes. And I don't remember how I was ending these podcasts before. Do you? Oh, now I do remember. And if you have not signed up for the monthly newsletter, The Current, you should do that. That's where we connect dots with all of the things that we're doing and building and thinking about so we can all learn, grow, and excel.
We don't know.
This time, 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 this time,